Christine Brown got her happy ending, and she deserves every single moment of it. But Truly Brown didn't get a fresh start. She got to watch her mother get one, and that is a completely different experience. That distinction matters more than this show has ever stopped to examine. So today, we are going to examine it. If this is your first time here, welcome to SisterWives Crew. Hit that like button right now and subscribe before this video is over, because what we do on this channel is go deeper than the drama, past the headlines, and into the real human stories that SisterWives has been telling without fully realizing it. You are going to want to be here for what comes next. Now, let's talk about Truly Brown, because here is the thing about the Christine and Kody divorce arc that has been celebrated, analyzed, memed, and turned into 1,000 reaction videos. The celebration has almost entirely centered on Christine, and Christine deserves that celebration. She earned it. Watching her walk away from a marriage that had been quietly diminishing her for years, watching her rebuild, watching her fall in love with David Woolley and step into what genuinely looks like the happiest chapter of her life is a story worth celebrating loudly. But in almost every single one of those videos, in almost every single fan discussion, in almost every reunion breakdown and Reddit thread, Truly Brown is either a footnote or a symbol. She is the cute kid at the wedding. She is the moment that makes you cry when Christine talks about giving her daughter a better example. She is used as evidence of Christine's success, and she deserves to be seen as something far more than that. She deserves to be seen as a person with her own story, and that story is more complicated than the happy ending narrative allows. So let's go back. Let's actually go back to the beginning, because context is everything here. In the early seasons of SisterWives, before the cracks were visible on camera, and long before they were visible to the audience, Christine and Kody had something that was genuinely different from his other relationships. Watch the footage. Watch the body language. Watch the ease. There was a natural warmth between them that read as real. Loud and argumentative at times, yes, but alive in a way that felt connected. Kody was engaged. Christine was the wife who made him laugh. Their home was chaotic and full and genuinely present in a way that the other households sometimes struggled to match. That environment, that specific version of family, is the one that Truly Brown was born into. That is her baseline. That is the version of family that her nervous system learned first. Everything that came after every withdrawal, every shift, every season where Kody became visibly more distant, more dismissive, more absent, Truly's developing brain registered all of that, not as a new reality, but as a departure from the one she had already learned to expect. Children do not process family dysfunction the way adults do. They do not have the language or the emotional framework to name what is changing. They just feel it. They feel the warmth decrease. They feel the presence is inconsistent, and they adapt quietly, invisibly, in ways that don't always show up on camera, but absolutely show up later in life. This is the part of Truly's story that nobody is talking about. When Christine made the decision to leave Flagstaff and relocate to Utah, that decision was correct. Let me be unambiguous about that. Staying in a marriage that had functionally ended, staying in proximity to a dynamic that was damaging her self-worth, and modeling the wrong things for her children, leaving was the right call. The timing was right. The instinct was right. But here's what we don't give enough weight to. When Christine Brown drove away from Flagstaff, she was driving toward her future. And Truly Brown was in the back seat, leaving behind the only home she had ever known, the friends she had made, the neighborhood she had grown up in, and whatever access she still had to the wider plural family structure she had been raised inside. Both things can be true at the same time. The move was necessary, and the move was another loss, layered on top of losses that were already accumulating. Think about that from a child's perspective. Truly was not old enough to understand the strategic logic of the relocation. She was not sitting in that car thinking, yes, this geographic distance will be healthy for my mother's psychological recovery and will enable her to build a new life with less interference. She was a child, watching her world get smaller, watching familiar things disappear in the rearview mirror, and being asked the way all children of divorcing parents are asked, without the question ever being spoken out loud, to be okay with it because the adults needed her to be okay with it. Now, none of that is Christine's fault. Christine did not have the option of a clean, painless transition. When you are leaving a plural marriage with shared property, shared community, and shared children, the transition is going to cost everyone something. Christine minimized the cost where she could, but she could not make it zero, and truly paid a portion of that cost. And that portion deserves to be acknowledged honestly. Here is where it gets even more specific, because I want to talk about something that does not get enough attention in conversations about children of divorce: the youngest child problem. When Christine left, McKelty was 25, Aspen was 26, Peden was 23. These were young adults, yes, with their own processing to do, their own grief to work through, but adults with developed coping strategies, with established identities, with support systems outside the family unit, with the cognitive and emotional tools to contextualize what was happening and begin working through it. Truly was 9. Do not tell me they all went through the same divorce, because they did not. The 9-year-old and the 25-year-old experience parental separation through completely different developmental lenses. The 25-year-old can call a friend, can journal, can go to therapy and articulate what they are feeling, can take a walk and come back and say, "I have processed this, and here is where I am." The 9-year-old cannot do any of those things at the same level. The 9-year-old internalizes. The 9-year-old watches. The 9-year-old learns quietly, without anyone realizing it, what relationships look like, what safety feels like or doesn't feel like, what it means when the person who is supposed to be there stops showing up consistently. And here is the compounding factor that makes Truly's position even more isolating than it might appear on the surface. Her older siblings, by the time the divorce happened, were navigating it as emerging adults. They had each other. They had their own households, their own partners, their own lives to return to after the hard conversations. Truly had none of that scaffolding. She was the youngest, by a significant margin, going through the most disruptive period of her family's life, with the least developed emotional toolkit of anyone involved. She was, in the most literal sense, navigating it alone in ways that the rest of the Brown children simply did not have to. That is not a small thing. That is an enormous thing, and it is almost never the headline. Now, let's talk about Christine's public presence after the divorce, because this is a layer that is uncomfortable to examine, but important to name. Christine's post-divorce persona, joyful, radiant, visibly healed, openly in love, posting beautiful content with David, laughing more than she ever appeared to laugh in the last several seasons of her marriage, is genuine. I want to be clear about that. This is not performance. This is a woman who did the hard thing, made the brave choice, and is now living the life she built for herself. That is real. That is beautiful. That deserves every bit of the applause it has received. But there is a secondary effect of that very public joy that nobody discusses. When your mother's healing is documented, celebrated, and broadcast to millions of people, and your own healing is quieter, slower, and happening in spaces the cameras don't reach, there is an implicit pressure that gets created. Not intentionally, not consciously, but it exists. The message that gets sent, even if nobody means to send it, is, look how well everything turned out. Look how happy we are now. And that pressure, that expectation of alignment between the mother's happiness and the child's happiness, can actually complicate a child's ability to process the grief they are still carrying. Because Christine is healing from losing a husband, truly healing from losing a father. Those are not the same injury. They do not follow the same timeline. They do not respond to the same interventions. And the fact that one of those healings has been loud and public and celebrated does not mean the other one is finished, or even that it has been fully started. This is where we have to talk about David Woolley, and we have to do it with honesty rather than just warmth. David Woolley is, by every account available to us, a good man, a present stepfather, someone who appears to genuinely care about Christine's children, and who has shown up for the role in ways that Kody Brown stopped showing up for years ago. That is real, and it matters, and it should be acknowledged. And Truly Brown still had to learn from scratch, with a damaged template, what it means to trust a father figure. That process is not photographable. It does not happen at a wedding. It does not happen in a single warm moment that gets edited into a highlight reel. It happens in the small, invisible, unglamorous spaces of daily life. The moments when a new step-parent says they will be somewhere and then is actually there. The moments when a child tests the limits of trust in ways that are not cute or postable, and a step-parent holds steady anyway. The moments when old expectations from an old relationship get accidentally activated by a new one, and a child has to do the internal work of separating who David is from what Kody taught her to anticipate. That work is hard. It is real, and it deserves to be named, not to diminish what David and Christine have built, but to honor what Truly has had to do quietly, without a camera crew, without an audience, and without a celebration. Because here is what I keep coming back to. This community has celebrated Christine's story beautifully, and Christine's story is worth celebrating. But Truly's story, the internal one, the one without cameras, the one that is still being written, that story deserves a sequel. That story deserves to be told carefully, honestly, and with the same depth of attention that we have given to every other member of this family. And we are just getting started. Let's talk about Kody Brown's public behavior after the divorce, because this is the layer that I think has been the most under-examined in terms of its direct impact on Truly. And it is the layer that makes me the most frustrated when I sit with it long enough to really think it through. Kody Brown has, in multiple interviews, in confessionals, and in reunion appearances, made statements about Christine's remarriage to David Woolley that range from dismissive to quietly bitter. He has framed Christine's new relationship in ways that minimize it. He has positioned himself as somehow above it, somehow unbothered by it, in a way that reads less like genuine peace and more like a man who is not capable of offering his ex-wife the grace she has more than earned. He has made comments that suggest he views Christine's happiness as either irrelevant to him or as something he has complicated feelings about, feelings he has not done the work of processing privately before expressing them publicly. And I want you to sit with the specific consequence of that for a moment. Not the consequence for Christine. Christine is a grown woman who has built a life that does not require Kody's endorsement to be valid. She does not need his approval. She has demonstrated that comprehensively and repeatedly. The consequence I want to talk about is the one for Truly, because Truly Brown lives with David Woolley. Truly Brown calls that house home. Truly Brown sits at that dinner table and does her homework in that house, and builds her sense of what safety feels like inside that specific environment. When Kody Brown makes dismissive comments about Christine's remarriage publicly, on camera, in ways that get clipped and shared and viewed hundreds of thousands of times, he is not just making a comment about Christine. He is making a statement about the home his daughter lives in. He is making a statement about the man his daughter is learning to trust as a father figure. He is telling his child, without saying the words directly, that the stability she currently lives within is not something he respects or endorses or celebrates. He may not understand that he is sending that message. I genuinely believe that Kody Brown operates with a level of self-awareness that makes it possible for him to not understand the downstream impact of what he says. But understanding or not, it is the message Truly receives. Children absorb the way their parents talk about each other's new lives. They absorb it deeply, and they carry it in places they don't always have words for. When your father signals even implicitly that your home is not something he values, that signal lands. It settles. And it adds to the weight of everything else that child is already carrying. This is not a small thing, and it has been discussed as though it is almost entirely about Christine and Kody's dynamic, as though Truly is not sitting somewhere receiving the transmission of every single one of those dismissals in real time. Now, I want to bring in something that I think the Sister Wives audience has gotten partially right, but has not fully completed the thought on. The prevailing fan theory around Christine's departure, the one that was validated over the final seasons, was that leaving would protect Truly from further damage. That getting her out of that environment, away from Kody's inconsistency and the dysfunction of the plural structure as it had deteriorated, was the protective action. And that theory was correct. The evidence supports it. Christine leaving when she did was the right call for her own well-being and for Truly's long-term environment. But there is a corollary to that theory that the fandom has been significantly less focused on, and it is this. The damage that had already been done, the years of witnessing paternal withdrawal, the years of absorbing the tension of a deteriorating marriage, the developmental imprinting of a household that was functionally fracturing. That damage did not disappear when Christine packed the car. It came with them. It was in the back seat, right alongside Truly. The audience celebrated the exit because the exit was celebratable, but the exit is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a different and harder chapter where the work actually happens. The chapter that is not dramatic enough to go viral, not quotable enough to clip, not visually satisfying enough to become a thumbnail. The quiet, daily, unsexy, invisible work of a child learning to recalibrate her nervous system in a new environment that does not get a standing ovation. It does not get a fan edit. It does not get the reaction video treatment. It just happens. slowly, in the background of a life that is being carefully rebuilt by a mother who loves her daughter with a ferocity that is one of the most documented and consistent facts in 18 seasons of this show. I want to spend a moment on that, because I think it matters enormously. Christine Brown is not a perfect person. She has never claimed to be. The show has documented her insecurities, her tendency toward people-pleasing in the early seasons, her struggle to ask for what she needed directly, her complicated feelings about plural marriage that took years to crystallize into the decision to leave. All of that is on record. All of that is real. But the one thing Christine Brown has never failed to be, across every season, through every conflict, through every difficult transition, is present for her children. Emotionally present, physically present, devoted in a way that is visible in the texture of how she talks about them, thinks about them, and makes decisions for them. Watching Christine talk about her kids in confessionals, in interviews, in the moments between the drama, you are watching a woman for whom motherhood is not an obligation, but a genuine calling. It is the thing she is most herself inside of. And Truly Brown has that mother. Truly Brown goes to sleep every night in a house with that woman. That is not a small inheritance. That is actually the inheritance that matters most. And this is where I want to make my prediction. Not a dramatic one, not a cliffhanger, just the most honest, grounded, evidence-based prediction I can offer after sitting with this story as carefully as I have. Truly Brown will be fine. Not because her childhood was easy. It was not. Not because the wounds aren't real. They are real. Not because the path from here to healed is short or straight. It is neither of those things. But because the single most important protective factor in a child's recovery from family instability is the consistent, loving presence of at least one devoted parent. And Truly has that in abundance. She has Christine. She has David, who is showing up in the ways that matter. She has a new community. She has a mother who left a marriage specifically because she refused to model a diminished life for her children. She has the evidence, lived daily, that things can get better, that the adults who love you can make hard choices on your behalf, and that those choices, painful as they are in the moment, can lead somewhere genuinely good. That is the foundation Truly Brown is building on. And foundations like that hold. The most defiant, most beautiful, most quietly radical outcome of this entire arc for Christine, for Truly, for anyone who has watched this story unfold across years of difficult television is simply this: she will be okay. Not someday in a distant theoretical future. Now, in the process of becoming. In the daily accumulation of a normal life with a present mother and a new home and the slow, unspectacular work of healing. That is the victory that does not get enough airtime. That is the sequel this community deserves to pay attention to. Now, I want to address something before I wrap this up because I think it is important and I do not want to leave it unsaid. There will be people watching this video who will say, and I understand the impulse, that this analysis is too heavy. That Truly is a kid on a reality TV show, and we are projecting complexity onto a situation that might be simpler than we are making it. That kids are resilient, that Christine is a great mom, that David is a good guy, and that maybe the story really is as simple as, she is going to be fine, so why spend 20 minutes unpacking it? Here is my answer to that. Because there are people watching this video right now who are not Truly Brown, but who are living something adjacent to Truly Brown's experience. There are adults watching this who were that child, the youngest one, the one who was in the back seat during the move, the one who had to figure out how to trust a new person when the old person had made trust complicated. There are parents watching this who are in the middle of their own Christine moment right now, making the hard, right choice, hoping their kid will be okay, carrying the guilt of the disruption alongside the clarity that it was necessary. For every single one of those people, the analysis matters. The careful examination of what that experience actually costs, not to condemn it, but to honor it. Not to weaponize it, but to name it honestly. That matters. Because the message that this community sends when it pays close attention to stories like Truly's is, you are seen. Your quiet story, the one without cameras, the one that does not go viral, the one that happens in the spaces between the dramatic moments, is real. It counts, and it deserves the same quality of attention as the triumphant moments that everyone celebrates. That is what SisterWives Crew is built on. That is what this series has been about from the very beginning. Not the drama for its own sake, but the human architecture underneath the drama. The real things that real people carry. The stories that are being told, whether anyone is paying attention or not. Now, before I give you the call to action for this video, and I have something slightly different for you today, I want to acknowledge something about where we are in this series. We have spent 12 topics now building a picture of the Brown family that goes past the surface, past the hot takes, past the takes that get the most clicks and the least thought. We have talked about Kody's psychology, about Robyn's position, about the structural dynamics of plural marriage, about what the show got right and what it missed, and what it was never going to be able to show us because some things happen in the quiet. We have built something together in this community, in these comment sections, in the conversations you have been having that I think is genuinely different from most of what exists in this fandom. And I want you to know that I do not take that lightly. Every comment, every share, every person who tagged a friend and said, "You have to watch this one," is why this series has been able to go where it has gone. You have given it the space to be careful instead of just fast. And that means something. So here's what I want to ask you today. And it is a different kind of question from what I usually leave you with. Instead of asking you about Kody, instead of asking who you think is most to blame, or what your theory is, or what moment made you give up on him, I want to ask you about Christine. What is one word that describes Christine Brown as a mother? Just one word. Drop it in the comments below. Because I think this community has an enormous amount of love and respect for this woman that does not get said out loud enough. The internet is very good at analyzing her, at debating her decisions, at dissecting her role in the plural marriage dynamics. But the simple, direct, human acknowledgement of what she has done as a mother, that gets buried sometimes. So let's say it plainly today. One word. Drop it below. And if this video gave you something, if it made you think about Truly's story differently, if it named something you had felt but never quite had the language for, if it made you think about someone in your own life who deserves the same careful attention, share it. Share it with a SisterWives fan who needs to hear this story told this way. Share it with someone who has been following the Christine arc and celebrating the happy ending. Because the happy ending is real, and the harder story underneath it is also real, and both deserve space. Like this video if you have not already. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need it. And subscribe, because topic 13 is coming. And I have been building toward it across every single one of these 12 topics. Everything we have talked about, the psychology, the power structures, the children, the mothers, the marriages, the exits, all of it has been laying the groundwork for an angle that I promise you have never encountered in this fandom before. Not a hot take, not a theory someone already posted on Reddit. Something that reframes the entire SisterWives story in a way that I think is going to genuinely stop you in your tracks. Topic 13 is going to change the way you watch this show. I will see you there.